This is the X-Zone Radio TV show with Rob McConnell on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and our worldwide family of broadcast affiliates. If you have a question for Rob McConnell or his guest, or if you've had a paranormal experience, call toll-free 1-800-610-7035 extension 0 or email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, our one address is X-Zone Radio TV.
Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com.
Do you have a dis-ease that you would like to alleviate through a natural means? Have you been contacted by angels, ghosts, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services free of charge for first-time clients contacting me during the month of April. These free consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you have always wanted to explore these types of experiences but were skeptical or simply could not afford them, then take advantage of this free special offer. Contact me through my website, aguidinglight, spelled lite.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Nobody can tell you there's only one song worth singing. They may try and sell you, 'cause it hangs them up to see someone like you. But you've gotta make your own kind of music, sing your own special song, make your own kind of music, even if nobody else sings along. You're gonna be nowhere, the loneliest kind of lonely.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. I hope that each and every one of you who celebrated Thanksgiving yesterday had a great day off and that you had a safe holiday. And today is Black Friday. I understand this is a super shopping day in the United States. So for you guys who are married or who end up, passing the wallet over, I hope it wasn't too hard on you either. Apparently, it's the official start of Christmas now, the Christmas season. It traditionally starts the day after Thanksgiving, so here we go. Ho, 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 and the rest of it, humbug. I'm waiting for somebody to open up a bah humbug store. You never know. In today's economy, I guess a lot of people will be getting gift cards from gas stations. Welcome to the X-Zone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm going to be your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone TV, and on shortwave, and across the United States, Canada, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, and now in 20 Asian countries on Aglia 2. Our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That's toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My email address is xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, talkstarradio@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradio.com and www.xzonetv.com, where you can watch and listen to the show live from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My producer tonight at Master Control in White Springs, Florida is the one and only Batman. Batman, nice working with you tonight. And on tonight's show, we have Matt Hoyle, who will be joining me in a few moments. We're going to be talking about Are We Scared Yet? From the haunted mansions to alien landing sites. We're going to be taking a paranormal tour of America. Eric Stearns will be with us in hour number 2, talking about how the world is truly mystical. Richard Clow, what can we do about the high price of gas? And in hour number 4, the one and only angel lady herself, Sue Storm, will be with us to do angel readings as well as give angel affirmations. Once again, our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. Last summer, award-winning photographer Matt Hoyle experienced the road trip thrill of a lifetime as he met with and photographed people from all over the country who have had paranormal experiences. Somehow he convinced them to return to the scene of their spooky and unexplained encounters with him in tow to recreate the mood they experienced at the time. Matt and his subjects visited haunted mansions, alien landing sites, werewolf feeding grounds, and ghostly lighthouses. And joining me now is Matt Hoyle. And Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. So what was it like going all over America taking pictures of these people who have had paranormal experiences, and they actually took you to the sites where they had them? That's amazing.
It was probably just as fun and spooky and creepy as it sounds. It was, I describe it as one of those funhouse rides that last for about 6 months.
Wow. Now, now you were out for a year, was it, or just the summer?
Yeah, it was for the summer. It was probably closer to 6 months because we did 2 stints of going across. We wanted to cover, pretty much most of the areas of America that get a lot of the stories and a lot of the sightings and encounters. You've got your Bigfoot, your Bigfoot area in Northern California, Southern Oregon. You've got your Area 51 in Roswell for your UFOs, and then you've got various other places like haunted swamps or cemeteries, throughout the Everglades in Louisiana. So we wanted to cover pretty much, most of the areas that people would know, and probably some that they didn't.
All right, let's talk more about this on the other side of this 2-minute break. Matt Hoyle's our special guest. His website is www.matthoyle.com. And Matt and I will be back on the other side discussing paranormal places on a great trip that he took across America. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone, coming to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. For 6 months, our guest Matt Hoyle went around America taking photographs of people who had had experiences with the paranormal, and it is all part of his new book entitled Encounters with the Strange and Unexplained, and Matt is with us tonight. And Matt, how did you get the idea for the book?
I just basically, because I'm interested in people, I'm a photographer, I'm a people photographer, and it just always struck me as interesting that there were so many photos of people's encounters, and they were never conclusive to the degree that someone else or a widespread audience would believe them. And I thought those people must feel, quite alone. And, what I wanted to do was take the things that we know to be, definitely real photographically, and there's always a person and there's always a scene at which, that person has the encounter. I thought, let me try to do that. And it just came to me. I had no interest in paranormal or disinterested. It interests me, I guess, as much as a normal, just anyone else. So I just thought, I'll let my camera be my ticket into the paranormal world.
So tell me, now that you've been taken on a wild ride throughout the paranormal world, have your interests changed?
You know what? There was always, short answer, yeah. I'm very much more open-minded. There were so many people that we saw. My wife, who produces with me, Anthea, we saw so many people, from professors and doctors and documentary makers, Academy Award-nominated documentary makers, to just everyday people, and they all had a very different slant. When you interview and photograph over 90 people, ranging from cryptozoologists to EVP experts to scientists who study sort of anything from alien life forms to ETs. It really became eye-opening to hear a lot of the theories that they had, and that kind of played with your notion of what you thought was real and what wasn't real.
All right, so how did you manage to find all these people?
The internet is an amazing thing, as you probably know, and once you unearth one group of people, whether they be cryptozoologists or paranormal groups, investigators, you tend to open up a community of people, like-minded people, and they gave us details of people they knew on the West Coast if they were on the East Coast, or wherever, and it just opened up from there. Once we started, we really almost had to say no to some people because we had so many people out there.
How did you pick who was in and who was out?
Well, it was a selection process that we told everyone up front. We said, hey, look, I'm a photographer, so I have to actually make the photos interesting. So, we want to get a story that has at least an interesting backdrop, and we want to get a person who at least, has an interesting sort of situation, whether that be someone in the middle of Area 51 of the desert or in a haunted mansion. We wanted to get variety. So once we got categorically one person with each scenario, we then didn't overlap. In other words, it was first come, first served. So we were pretty open. I don't think we were too picky with how a person looked or anything. In fact, that didn't really even play. It was just something that was going to be interesting to a widespread audience.
Now, how long did it take you to actually produce the book?
It probably took a year in total, because you can imagine with around 90 stories, and we had to whittle them down to 60, which is still fairly large. We shot them, we photographed them, but we also shot video footage and interviewed them. So, to take down all the information and edit it and turn it into a story, and for me to do what I do with my photography. And if you've seen the photos in the book, you'll see that I try to give each one a very, almost a formal, old-fashioned painterly, look to them, almost like the old-fashioned portraits of the presidents and, royalty. I really wanted to make them quite grand. And that took a good half a year. So half a year to shoot and half a year to prepare the book. So, it was a big project.
Now, did anything happen to you that challenged your thoughts on these topics while you were out there shooting these photos and getting the video footage?
There were a few things, and I go into this by saying that I'm not one who jumps to any real conclusion until I find out facts. I guess it's my scientific geeky side coming through. But we were in New Orleans, my wife and I, and we had just got through. This was after Katrina, obviously. There was a lot of, let's just say, activity in the area, as told by a lot of paranormal investigators. And so we just got through photographing a crawl space in an attic, just a scary little area, an old haunted mansion that, kind of, gave you your own, creepy feeling. But after we had done that, it was nighttime, and we decided to stay at another haunted mansion that was supposedly vacant. So my wife and I are there, and it's after midnight, and I'm kind of, I'm a light sleeper, but my wife sleeps like a log through anything. So I'm there just sort of lying in bed, and I hear something above me, and I don't know what room that was, but again, this was an old, dilapidated mansion, so it really, it wasn't supposed to have anyone in there. And there's a couple talking, arguing, or they're talking loud enough for me to hear them in a higher voice. I didn't quite understand why there was going to be someone there. But just when I was trying to make sense of it, thinking this can't be, this is supposed to be vacant, there's a ball of light, of orange glowing light, or let's just say red-yellow glowing light, that floats down from the ceiling. And I'm just thinking my mind's playing tricks on me. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I didn't know what to make of it, but I did know that I wasn't comfortable. So I closed my eyes, as you probably would do. And the bed just then started shaking to the point where it's making a noise. And I'm probably shaking just as hard. So I turned to my wife, who's got her back to me, and I start to shake her because I don't want to go through this alone. And the next thing that happened, I'll never forget, my wife, she turned to me, and her face wasn't really the familiar face that I had known. It was wide open eyes and a grin that really just wasn't my wife. And it just scared the daylights out of me. And to this day, she doesn't remember any of it, but I do.
So, would you say that your wife was possessed?
I wouldn't say that because, again, I don't want to jump to a conclusion, but I certainly wouldn't. I would say she something happened that night, and I want to keep open-minded and just say the facts that I saw, and it was really something I can't explain, and I don't even know what I would imagine it to be, but all those events that transpired, have me a lot more open-minded. Let's just say that.
Now, how did you achieve the look of these photographs? The people seemed genuinely scared. How did you get them to reenact that well?
Well, everybody in the book, I tend to kind of almost hypnotize people when I photograph them because I have a way that tries to make them very, very comfortable, and I really just wanted to get them to take them really back to where they had their encounter, and we literally did that. And so as I'm doing it and getting them to tell me their story, the look of terror would invariably come to their eyes. It was fabricated to the degree that I had to, kind of talk them into it, but there was certainly nothing fabricated about the motivation to their look. It was what you see at the scene at which they had it, and most of them were pretty frightened or scared, and that really does come across, I'm told. So, yeah.
What was your most compelling story that you included in your book? The one that you felt was the one that would convince anybody who was skeptical that there is something called the paranormal?
Look, there were so many stories in there, and I think there are so many different slants. There is one story, and it's of a father and son ghost-busting team. They're paranormal investigators in Rhode Island, and they are absolutely the most normal, nicest family that you would have ever met. And the father has an interesting theory, and he basically says that it has something to do with quantum electrodynamics, which is to say, people who have lived in the past or the future, and there's just the space-time continuum getting a glitch in it. So what we're seeing that is ghosts is actually just, that whole space-time continuum having a glitch so that someone from the past or the future, appears for a moment or so in our geographic space. And it really made me think that coming from even a scientific angle, it really makes a lot of sense. Do I believe it or not? I don't know, but it shows that there are so many theories out there that really are interesting and could very well be true. Who are we to say? I mean, at one stage we thought the world was flat, so that story I thought was very interesting.
All right, and now the UFO landings, or the UFO landings that you cover in your book, where were they?
Well, we went to the epicenter. Really, we started there anyway, in Area 51 in Nevada and Roswell, and that was really, obviously for two reasons. Because we knew that there were going to be folks there that have had experiences, because it was such a famous place for activity. The other was it would just make such a good photo to take them at the scene, that has become so famous through television and
great marketing, yeah.
Yeah. So and of course there were other areas all across America, and I'm sure across the world that have had not only one but quite a few people who have seen it, and you start to ask, okay, well if 5 to 10 people in the same town have seen it, you kind of have to. You start to wonder, what did they see?
Hey, Matt, stand by. You and I have to take our commercial break for the news at the bottom of the hour. Matt Hoyle is our special guest. The name of his book is Encounters with the Strange and Unexplained, and his website is www.matthoyle.com. Still to come on tonight's show, Eric Stearns and my good friend Sue Storm, the angel lady, who will be doing angel readings for one and all, who give us a call at 1-877-528-8255. My name's Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
Hi, this is Ken Elliott. When I'm floating around the universe, I always try to tune in to Rob McConnell.
Hi ho there, Trinity Frog on Sesame Street. When I want to find out what's going on with UFOs or ghosts, I listen to the X Zone with Rob McConnell.
This is Les Corrigan from Target Internet Development. You're listening to Rob McConnell on the X Zone Radio Show.
This is John Hogue, prophecy scholar, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
When I think back on all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. And my lack of education hasn't hurt me none. I can read the writing on the wall. Kodachrome, they give us those nice bright colors, give us the greens of summers, makes you think all the world's a sunny day. Oh yeah, I got a Nikon camera. I love
Matt Hoyle is our special guest, X Zone Nation. He is the author of Encounters with the Strange and Unexplained. His website is www.matthoyle.com. Matt, you were traveled across America. It took you 6 months to to get everything ready for your book. It took a year to get the book ready to be published. What was the most exciting part of the 6 months you were on the road?
There were a few. It just seemed, like I said, like a whole funhouse ride. I think one of the times when we were in the Everglades, and I was actually Bigfoot hunting with three cryptozoologists, and we're running across the woods for what sounds like a Bigfoot. They triangulate his whereabouts scouts with their equipment, and traipsing through the woods. And for a moment, I thought, look what you're doing. You're out here hunting. Like, how cool is that? So that's just one of the experiences that happened. But there were so many of them.
Did they ever have any success in locating that Bigfoot?
Well, the guys who I was out with said that there were sightings previous, and that's why we went out there on the day. And no, I mean the short answer is no, not at that particular one. But there were hair samples and droppings, and and limb breaks that they collected in the area, I guess, earlier and later than that occurrence that I was there. But we went to a place that was known as having activity, and certainly I did photograph a couple of people who did quite clearly see a Bigfoot in the area. And one of them was just a typical housewife who who is known around the world now because she, her story was so amazing and she was so credible. So it was amazing to be out there, to do any of the things that I had done. And, a normal Joe who doesn't specialize in any of these things, to go out to, a haunted mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, and, to touch a haunted armor, it was just, it was just interesting to go to all these places and do the things that you only see in movies.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the increased number of television shows is going to prove to be an asset to the sales of your books when it comes to all the different paranormal shows that are out there now?
You know what? It's amazing because I probably subconsciously, the idea for this book probably came because it is so popular, and it's been popular for a while. But I think we all have a part in us that can't conclusively prove or disprove anything, and so we love that. And I think that there are people out there who have more of a paranormal bent. There are people who have more of a cryptozoological, more scientific bent, and then people who look to the heavens and look to the stars and the universe. And I think that there's something in all of us, except the closed-minded people who just say, "Oh, nothing's real," even religion or whatever. I think those people are few and far between, but most people do have an open mind to a degree. They just favor one particular area probably more than the other. So, so far the book has been amazingly popular, and I like to believe that it's the images as much as it is just the stories that relate to everybody, because we all know someone who has had an encounter or a story, some more than others.
Did you see any UFOs? Did you see any ghosts? I mean, besides the apparition that appeared to you in your hotel room?
Well, I've seen and felt some weird things along this whole trip. My wife and I we were in St. Augustine, Florida, and basically we the innkeeper gave my wife a flower to say, "Welcome to our inn."
Oh, that's nice.
We were staying in a back room, and we went out late at night because we had just driven there to get dinner, and we came back, and the rose wasn't on the desk that it was supposed to be on. It was in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the room on the floor. There were no windows open, and no even windows near where it was, and we just kind of looked at each other and said, "Okay." And we went to bed, and we're both in bed before we both went to sleep, including my wife, thankfully. And the shower comes on, and we just looked to each other, and I said, "You go turn it off." And
wait a sec, hold on. You told your wife to get out of bed and turn the shower on. That came on by itself.
I'm not going to do it.
Nice guy. Nice guy.
Well, I didn't believe it was anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to know. So anyway, it was turned off, and then it turned right back on.
Wow.
And we just looked at each other and said, "No, let's leave it." And we did, and it eventually turned itself off. But things like that happened throughout the whole trip. People in the paranormal field said there's going to be electromagnetic activity. Don't be surprised if your camera or things broke.
Yep.
And sure enough, in Louisiana, at the what was it, plantation, the music plantation. Basically, it was after shooting that, everything broke down. My camera, my computer, my flashes, and we had to throw away the flashes. The camera was broke for a good month, and the computer had to be taken to Chicago to get fixed. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before. I'm a professional photographer, and so, things like that happen.
Just like to remind everyone that Matt Hoyle is our special guest. His website is www.matthoyle.com. He's the author of Encounters with the Strange and Unexplained. And what would be one of your most memorable photographic experiences?
There was one that was up in Wisconsin, and the lady in the book, she just looks like your typical grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like my grandmother, actually. But and it wasn't so much, I guess, the experience at the time of me taking it, more her telling the story, but the story that she told about her actually being abducted into a spaceship across the street, and and a large blue bird, kind of came up to her and hugged her. And that was pretty fantastical and amazing, and conjured up all sorts of imagery, and made me think that that's what makes all these stories so interesting, is they are so diverse and they come from everybody. And so that was pretty amazing just to hear that story come out of her mouth. But there were so many experiences where we're basically we show up in the middle of the woods,
mm-hmm.
and here's an experience with Lorraine. Lorraine, I'm trying to get her surname, Lorraine Warren, and she was up in Connecticut, and in Monroe, Connecticut, and she was one of the original exorcists for the Amityville Horror House.
Yeah.
And my wife and I basically drove, and it just happened to be a dark and stormy night, like it would be when we arrived. And that was quite scary, because when we went in the house, the door kind of closed by itself, and then she says, "Oh, there you are, Newman," or some name. And we looked around, we didn't see anyone, and we were just going, okay, someone's in here, and we can't see them. But then a cat jumped up on the couch, and she started petting it. She goes, "It's my cat." And we're just like, of course it's your cat. So that was kind of, we had a lot of those comedic experiences where we were probably spooked before we actually even started photographing. So that happened quite a bit.
Yeah, well, that would certainly raise questions, especially going into that house. Who was the most famous person that you photographed for your book?
I would say, well, you know what? Lorraine Warren she is pretty famous. She's
mm-hmm.
known in a lot of circles as one of the original, paranormal investigators, and she's traveled the world. So it was fairly famous. We photographed the lady who inspired the movie Noise, the electronic voice phenomena, I believe, in Lake Tahoe. And she was, I guess, famous enough because she was the reason why that movie existed. And she was, and you can see her photo,
mm-hmm.
and there's an oscilloscope reading, or a visual readout of her mother, who basically had passed away, but she played it for us, and the voice says, "I miss you, Lisa," and you kind of can't mistake it. And so there are people who are categorically at the head of their fields in the various areas, and we were lucky enough to photograph a lot of those people, and it was an honor. It's a great honor.
1-877-528-8255. Matt Hoyle is our special guest, and this portion of the X Zone is being brought to you by our good friends at Premier Psychics. If you would like to give them a call, their toll-free number is 1-866-803-6593. That's 1-866-803-6593. Or you can always visit Premier Psychics online at www.premierpsychics.com. What's next for you? This book is finished, or are you going to do book 2, sequel of the paranormal?
I'm just glad to get some closure on some of my own unexplained experiences. So the book is, I'm quite happy that it's coming to a close. I'm very proud of it. So I don't think I'll be pursuing that. But people interest me. So I'm going to look to to the various subcultures and the various groups out there that that interest me, and I actually am in the process of thinking about what I do next. But whatever it is, it's going to be a journey. It'll be a fun journey, that's for sure.
I mean, you're not going to go back out and try and get the elusive ghost or the elusive alien on film?
Well, you know what? That'll be a lifelong thing, and if I do, I'll tell you, I'll be a rich man, won't I? But no, I think that after a year's worth and after 90 sort of encounters that I kind of shared with these people, I really feel that I've done my lifetime's worth. And I will mention that the book is full of not only the images, but we did put the first person accounts of each person, so they're telling their story on the page in their own words. So that's something that we didn't want to manipulate either. So you can you're reading these powerful stories, and you're seeing the powerful images, and there's a lot of honesty there because we wanted them to tell their stories in their scenes. So, yeah.
How did you validate the stories?
Well, the important thing, I think, was that we researched a heck of a lot of the people and a lot of the categories, but we did tell them that it wasn't our job to believe or disbelieve them. It wasn't our job to prove their story was real. Most of the people that we photographed were fairly decently known in the media. They had already had, a lot of them had their own radio shows. A lot of them had, were, well published and, had done the talk show circuit and were credible within their own circles. So it was a case of really going, just tell me your story.
Right.
Tell me what you believe, and let me tell that story in a photo. So it really wasn't about doing that. And I guess that was the important thing for me is I'm not a documentarian to the degree I can't really do enough research. I don't think I got the brain cells to do that. But I can take photos that tell the story and let a person believe or not believe, it in their own right. So that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a real honest depiction of these stories, because whether the stories themselves are true or not, the telling of the story is true. The person who thinks that they have the story is true. And for all we know, it did happen. And there were a lot of occurrences where you kind of went, yeah, I'm totally sure it did.
Plus, it makes for a good marketing material.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm a photographer, and for me, it was never going to be a book. It was going to be an exhibition, and I wanted to basically, I wanted to capture, as I said, a subculture of people out there who are just like, I know people. I've had experiences in my life, my family. So we all know someone, and I just wanted to capture that thread of people and let them tell stories. And it does make for great entertainment. Well, I'm hoping so anyway.
All right, stand by, please. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Matt Hoyle is our special guest, www.matthoyle.com. The name of his book is Encounters with the Strange and Unexplained. Photographs of the people who actually had the encounter with their story firsthand in this book. Once again, the name of the book is Encounters with the Strange and Unexplained. And I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone TV, and on shortwave from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
You really should accept this time he's gone for good. He'll never come back now, even though he said he would. So darling, dry your eyes. So many other guys would give the world, I'm sure, to wear the shoes he wore. Oh, come on,
Matt Hoyle is our special guest. And Matt, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. And you know what? I think that the book that you have done is going to be a surefire hit. And congratulations. It's a great idea, and I'm glad that you've done it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now, Matt, I've got a question for you here that came to me during the commercial break. Did you bring anything home with you? Now, since you went around the country, photographing these paranormal sites, has anything strange happened to you in your home?
Yes. Yes, it has. It has. There have been weird things that have happened that we kind of just look at each other, my wife and I, and just go, did something follow us back? And yes, the answer is yes.
What do your friends say? The friends who knew you or know you as the serious photographer when they see your book?
I think that they think it was pretty cool to go around and to see, a whole range of people that they probably would never have even thought, possible to actually do in one sort of lump journey. And so I think they're pretty amused that we went out there and we did it. So, but I think just like anyone, they're cynical on when they hear the stories.
Sure.
Because they weren't there themselves, and it's easy to kind of draw a conclusion when you're not there.
It makes a big difference when you actually see the people and you're one-on-one with them, and they tell you the story. You can see the sincerity in their faces,
yes.
And many times you can actually see and hear the fear that they encounter.
Right.
Yeah,
you're so right. That's true.
This is what I found when I was working with Creepy Canada, that the people, when you see them and they go through the reenactment, they live it again.
Yes.
And the emotions come to the surface. The fear comes back if it was a negative experience. However, there were those joyous times when people had encounters with those who had departed months, years ago, and they had the opportunity of once again communicating with them from the other side. So, congratulations. I think that this will be a great Christmas gift. And Exonation, www.matthoyle.com is his website. The name of Matt's book is Encounters with the Strange and the Unexplained. And to you and yours, Matt, the very best of the season to you, and a very happy and joyous New Year.
You too. Thank you very much.
Nice talking to you, Matt. And please give my best to your wife.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye now. What a nice guy. You see, he went out with an open mind. He went out and he said, all right, you believe it's true, then it's true. And this is what I've been saying. Just because you're not there, how can we judge that it really didn't happen? Of course, I'm not talking about Roswell, New Mexico, because we all know that really didn't happen. I mean, sure, there was a crash, but it wasn't aliens. Was it? 1-877-528-8255 is toll free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. When we come back from the news at the top of the hour at 6:30 past, Eric Stearns is going to be with me. Eric hasn't been with us for nearly a year now. But it's going to be great having Eric back on. We're going to be talking about this metaphysical world of ours, and maybe he'll give a psychic reading, maybe one or two, or maybe three. Our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That's toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. And we'll be back after the news as we continue right here on the Talk Star Radio Network. Don't go away.